All right. Well, on a day where there were many, many storylines, I'm going to float one here that stood out to me, of course, as a Steelers fan. TJ Watt putting himself
Oh,
in
yeah.
rare territory, becoming the second all-time sacks leader in a person's first 100 career games. TJ Watt surpassing his brother JJ Watt. So TJ has 88 career sacks in his first 100 games. JJ had 87 and a half. So now TJ has bragging rights. But the most telling part of that list, Mark, is that Reggie White is number one
I know.
with 105 in
It's
his first
insane.
100 career games. He averaged over a sack a game in his first 100 career games. So I was like, as impressive as this is for TJ Watt, and it is, I was just amazed. Reggie White is sitting there with 20 more than the
Yeah.
other guys.
I love that. I love that stat when it was tweeted out. I really loved it because my instant thought was like, for guys like us who've only really ever saw Reggie play in highlights, right? Like he's just the generation right before we got into football. That is such a great stat for like people like, JJ Watt won three defensive players
defensive player of the year
in a row. Had what probably the best like 5-year span of a defensive player maybe in NFL history. TJ Watt is a defensive player of the year winner, and if you watch him play, is an absolute menace.
Yeah,
and
Myles Garrett's on that list, and he's an absolute freak and game wrecker,
and all of a sudden Reggie White was them and more. Like, I mean, he was like, that's how impressive. So when anyone talks about, when one of the old heads talks about Reggie White, and you young whippersnappers out there, understand the respect on that name. I mean, because that dude, there's a reason why he is one of the top 10 greatest of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how great these players are that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
And he had 20 more.
And
sacks.
in an era where it's easier to get sacks, it's easier to get sacks now than ever before because people are passing way more. You have way more opportunities. Offensive line plays way down. How many times did they actually throw the ball during Reggie White's era? Maybe you guys will maybe passing the ball 20 times a game, and he was getting a sack a game, more than that. It's crazy.
He's absolutely dominant. No, yeah,
that was
an extremely impressive list, and happy for TJ Watt to see him get into that rarefied air. But good stuff for sure.
Block Reggie White for $20,000 or catch him
right. Anything on any of those hypothetical lists, we are not taking do anything against Reggie White. I would pay to not have to do.
I'd pay whatever it has to take to not block Reggie White.
100%. But we mentioned how many storylines are coming out of this past week, and one of them, of course, being the bevy of down to the wire finishes this past week, with a few of those coming with big implications, and a couple others signaling some returns, that of Kyler Murray, and we had some injuries this past week as well. We're going to get to it all coming up here on our full Week 10 recap.
Transform your body into a canvas of exquisite storytelling and profound self-expression with the skilled hands of Ryan Allison. Craft custom masterpieces that tell your unique story together. Ryan specializes in color tattoos as well as black and gray. He also practices a diverse range of styles, whether you're passionate about anime, fantasy, mythology, pop culture, video games, movies, the esoteric, nature, creatures, dot work, black work, or you have your own ideas. Ryan embraces your distinct vision with an unwavering commitment to passion, precision, and originality. Each project he undertakes is a labor of dedication, a fusion of research, artistic ingenuity, and profound symbolism. His commitment to authenticity is nothing short of remarkable, infusing his very soul into every creation. From half and full sleeves to bodysuits, awesome back pieces, to majestic front panels, Ryan is the artist for anyone seeking powerful, breathtaking artwork. With every stroke of his needle, he weaves a tale that's as unique as you are. Don't settle for ordinary tattoos when you can elevate your ink to the extraordinary with Ryan Allison. Embark on your creative journey by booking a consultation with him and proudly exhibit your story on your skin. Visit Ryan at Why Not Ink Studio in North Park Mall, or check out his portfolio online at ryanallison.art. Ryan Allison Tattoos. When you choose me, you're not just getting a tattoo, you're getting an experience.
All right, welcome to the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan, part of the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network. Go check out all of the other shows there at forfantasysakeqc.com. And of course, as always, we thank our sponsors, especially of this show here, Durham Remodeling and Ryan Allison Tattoos, for helping make all of this possible. So, Mark, we talked about the epic game winners this past week, 5 of them winning the game in last second fashion as time expired. That is the most game winning decisions in a single week in NFL history per
It's
Adam
crazy.
Schefter. And so that obviously tells you what kind of week this was. And we also had some, downers from some teams, some unfortunate losses. And the AFC North continues to be an absolute game wrecker throughout the league. So we're going to get to touch on all of those and more this upcoming week, or I should say in this episode here. So we'll start as always with a quick mention of the Thursday Night Football game. We did a full recap of that in our Friday episode, so go check that out if you want a more in-depth analysis. But the Bears win 16-13, and now they've had a couple days to stew on it. Are there any other further thoughts from this game before we get into the Sunday slate?
No, the Bears were winners on Sunday again, with the Cardinals winning, Kyler Murray coming back. Kyler Murray did exactly what Justin Fields needs to do now coming here on out. You got to win games. You got to show up. You got to play good football. And so there's a lot of football left. Everyone feels like just because your team maybe isn't even going to make the playoffs, and most likely we know, even though there's mathematically not eliminated yet, teams like the Cardinals, the Bears, the Panthers feel like they're out of the playoffs. There's a lot of dudes who are playing for a lot right now, and Kyler Murray is one of them. So his big win on Sunday is kind of, maybe he says, it set the stage for Justin Fields playing really well down the stretch, but also helping out the Bears even more, feel like they're going to lock up a top 3 pick with that Panthers pick, no matter what them as a franchise does. And then I think obviously with the Patriots losing, that hurt a little bit with the Bears, because I think the Patriots and the Giants are now the other 2 teams with the Panthers that are absolutely the abysmal teams of the NFL. I think the Cardinals and the Bears arrows are pointed back up because their quarterbacks are coming back. But I'm telling you what, the Panthers, Giants, and the Patriots are just abysmal right now. And at this point in time, I don't see how those 3 teams don't end up in some sort of order 1, 2, 3. Obviously, then with the Bears taking the Panthers pick.
Yeah, let's get to that game with the Patriots falling to the Colts 10-6. A brutal game this was for many reasons, but this ended in bizarre fashion as well. Yet again, the Bill Belichick versus his quarterback Mac Jones saga continues.
You mean
it's ended? Who knows?
Bizarre fashion.
Yeah. Mac throws a terrible pick late in the fourth quarter, and then he is subsequently benched for the final drive of the game with a chance to go down and get the game winner. So they put Bailey Zappi in, and to roll Mac Jones out for the presser afterwards. It's like, man, just throwing this guy to the wolves at that point. Of course, all of the questions come out if he has the trust of Bill Belichick, and the answers from both Mac Jones and Bill Belichick were obviously telling in that they don't really want to talk about this at all. But the writing's on the wall. Bill Belichick does not like his quarterback, doesn't want Mac Jones. And to be fair, Mac Jones has not earned any of this, respect for on the field play.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been good either.
Well, I'll say in defense of Mac Jones, 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years in the league.
Yeah,
you have a dearth of weapons for sure, but that doesn't stop you from making bad decisions. Like obviously that interception at the end was just so ugly, so bad. And even if you have a lack of weapons, there's ways to still be efficient, move the ball, and show that you are the guy, and it's your weapons that are failing you, right? Like Joe Burrow lost a game yesterday, but he's still the guy because you watched him ball out, and he had a receiver, Boyd, drop a ball, a catchable ball to help his team win that game. Didn't happen. He loses the game. So I think it's the writing was on the wall. What I took mainly from this game, two things. Shane Steichen and that Colts team, man, that is a well-coached team. And they are going to be really fascinating and fun to watch when Richardson is healthy and how he really elevates this team, or how they can incorporate what they're building right now as a culture with their superstar talent in Anthony Richardson. And I feel like a little bit like, in this weird way, the pressure is going to be on Anthony Richardson. Like, this is a 5-5 team. Like, this team is proving
they have a chance. Yeah.
It's like they're proving that, like, hey, we can kind of do this without you if we play this scheme system way. So is this a little bit of that, the Niners when they added Trey Lance, when they get him back, does it work or not? I think there's going to be an odd little amount of pressure on Anthony Richardson when he comes back, because the Colts have looked as good as they've looked as far as writing them off and finding a way to get to 5 wins. And then on the opposite side, the Patriots, man, this is the, the fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, this is, McDoubles now cost $3. Like, we are watching the decline of the Roman Empire. We are living in it in America right now. A McChicken for $3.19. It's, it's un-American. We have lost our way. We're fallen. And the Patriots are that right now too. This is the absolute decline. And I will say at this point, it feels like Bill Belichick is basically saying, like, I don't care what happens to me anymore. It feels a little bit like but he's not going to go down babying Mac Jones. Like, he's going to throw him under the bus. And that's exactly what he did by benching him in that final series. That is him throwing him under the bus, knowing he's got the media obligations and all those things. And you saw Bill O'Brien just berate Mac Jones in the side.
Oh yeah,
they're done. Like, so they're done with him. Mac Jones, I think, has a future as an NFL quarterback. He doesn't feel like a guy who's too big to be a backup, or doesn't feel like he'd be too much of a distraction to be a backup. And I think in certain systems and places, he could be a really nice bridge quarterback, kind of like Mitch was for Kenny last year. Like, I don't think Mac Jones is done, but the days of Mac Jones being the guy that you just write in as your starting quarterback and you build around him, I think we've seen the end of that in a colossally bad interception late in the game. The Patriots are terrible. They still had a chance to win that game, and that was just such a gross interception to lose that game.
Yeah, it was brutal. The AFC South is now fascinating to me because,
the Colts are in it.
We'll talk about the Jaguars coming up, but the Texans, the way they're playing, and the Colts, everyone's now within a game or two of that division lead, whereas Jacksonville had an opportunity this past week to really create some separation and also put their stamp on the league in terms of saying, we can beat up really good teams as well. Yeah. And unfortunately for them, that was not the case. But yeah, it was a fascinating situation in both the AFC South and the AFC North as well. And so we'll get to the game that kind of impacted both the Texans at the Bengals, and the Bengals fall 30-27 as CJ Stroud once again puts up great numbers. He had one bad pick in this game, but he's able to rally the troops and get them. They're one of those game-winning situations that we mentioned, one of the 5 games that went down to the last second. And Matt Amendola boots through a 28-yard field goal to get them the win. But CJ Stroud was the guy that kind of helped get them to that point and engineer the comeback. And you mentioned Tyler Boyd dropping a touchdown pass to where the Bengals had to settle for a field goal. Really would have changed the dynamic of the end of that game for sure. But then Tyler Boyd also made an incredible catch for like a 60-yard gain on the drive prior. So it's like, that actually may have been the same drive. So it's tough to say what would have happened, if he catches that ball. But yeah, ultimately brutal loss for the Bengals because Cincinnati obviously put themselves in a hole, gets Joe Burrow back, right, and they had been playing so great. This was a game, and again, these are losses in the conference. These matter. These will come back to bite you. Same with the Bills. Like, they've been losing games that are in conference. Like, you can't afford, if you're going to have a bad loss, for it to be an AFC opponent. It's just it stings that much more. And with how competitive the AFC North has been, this was a tough loss for the Bengals. Obviously, they're going to be okay. They're a good team, but it's going to really hurt them in terms of fighting for that division crown, especially with how well the Ravens have been playing, and Pittsburgh and the Browns too. So meanwhile, the Texans, we just mentioned it, are really pushing now for the AFC South crown. Let's forget about all of these preseason notions. That is out the window. The Texans are playing very good ball. CJ Stroud, dare I say, is playing at an MVP style level. Don't even talk about rookie of the year. That should be already penciled in. So very impressive what we're seeing from Houston, just the culture and everything in DeMeco Ryans' first year at the helm. And the Bengals, this is going to be one of those where you got kicked in the teeth a little bit. It was a close game, but you're going to have to rebound and come back with a win very soon. Otherwise, this division could get away from you, and all of a sudden you're scratching and clawing to get one of those wild card spots.
You nailed it. I mean, you said everything. Really, there's what about the Bengals?
Yeah, I went on a little.
Well, no, but I mean you did. I mean the Bengals absolutely. When you start slow, I mean, last year they started slow, but then I think they won like 10 in a row. It was something crazy. Like you give yourself very little margin for error. I don't think there's anything to panic if I am a Bengals fan losing to a very feisty, talented, up-and-coming Texans team on the road in the way they did. If you look at the injury report, they were missing Hubbard, they were missing Higgins. Like they certainly weren't at full strength, and so that's a problem for the Bengals too. Like you got to be in a healthy position to win games, especially on the road. I'm not panicking from the Bengals yet because you still have important games coming up against your own division. With the AFC North, some big ones that'll really decide everything, like Thursday night coming on up, Bengals, Ravens. That is going to be a colossally important football game coming up this week. And finally, a really great
Thursday night football game of the year, finally, too.
And with real implications. So that's really exciting for us as fans. So I'm not panicking yet. Depending on what happens Thursday night, Bengals fans could be in a real, real trouble. I'll say this, as far as the Texans go, do I want to go as far as saying MVP for CJ Stroud? I will say this. If you look at the numbers of quarterbacks in the NFL right now, Dan, it's not impressive. Tua leads the league in touchdown passes with 19 through 10 games. You know what I mean? Like, no one's having the 35. Like, Patrick Mahomes won an MVP with 50 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like, no one's having a year like that at all. Kirk Cousins is second in the NFL with 18 touchdowns. And obviously he's already missed basically two games and is not going to play the rest of the season. Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, 18, 17, 17 touchdowns. And so when you look at CJ Stroud, 15-2, his importance for the team, you can make the argument, but I would rather at this point in time, if we're going to talk about MVPs in a kind of a weird down quarterback year as far as big numbers. I think there's some other interesting, maybe defensive candidates and players like that you can make the argument for, like, maybe it's time, maybe it's a chance to give them an opportunity.
That'd be great, but the NFL is not going to do it.
Yeah, to win an MVP. So I don't want to get into that mudded conversation too much. I'll just say this: Texans fans, right now, cherish it, enjoy it. Thrive on it, because you never know what can happen after a rookie year, right? We saw RG3 have a miraculous rookie year. I mean, he won rookie of the year over Andrew Luck. We saw Herbert have a miraculous rookie year, and then it's been nothing but mediocrity for his team since then, and frustration. So enjoy it, have fun with it, and hope that the culture and the base that you're building is something to build off of. It feels like it is, because there's a lot of young players. It's a young culture. Everyone feels like kind of this weird us against the world mentality. And Stroud is playing really, really electric football. But they are absolutely alive in the AFC South, because the Jaguars are absolutely on phony alert. I mean, they got the pantsed on national TV and embarrassed. And it was a chilly day when they got pantsed. I mean, it was like that's the kind of embarrassment they're struggling with right now in Jacksonville.
The Minnesota Vikings at home with Josh Dobbs finally getting to know some of his teammates' names.
What a win!
Having a locker, gets a win and looks good. I mean, man, This is wild. It's almost making me think like, man, the Steelers should have just kept Josh Jobs all along and not shopped him around. But the Vikings win 27-19. Derek Carr gets hurt. His injury could be concerning here, but Jameis Winston does throw a couple touchdowns late in this game, including an amazing touchdown catch by Chris Olave.
Yeah.
But Josh Jobs, runs it in again, engineers, late heroics. Already kind of establishing a rapport with TJ Hawkinson and company. So, look out. The Minnesota Vikings are playing some good football, and they're still 6-4. So, we'll get to the Lions not too much longer down in this episode. But the NFC North battle could be an interesting one and shaping up. I mean, we thought once Kirk Cousins went down, the way they were trending, it was not not looking good for Minnesota. All of a sudden now, they are still very much alive in the division. For the Saints, they're at 500. Starting to be a little concerning, especially if Derek Carr doesn't play. I just don't know where this team is going. Jameis Winston looked pretty good, so it's like maybe they're in better hands. I feel
the opposite. I'm ready to say if I'm the Saints, like I would sit Derek for precautions and see how Jameis handles a start, because the offense moves better with Jameis Winston. Like Jameis turns the ball over, but my God, he's willing to give you they have so many playmakers. He's willing to give the playmakers a chance. And so if I'm a Saints fan right now, and I get it. You feel like you got Derek Carr to as part of this all-in move. But Jameis Winston, I feel like right now with this team, the way it's constructed, gives your team a better chance to win football games. I oddly feel that way.
I don't think that's crazy.
At least it's more fun to watch too. Like, it's just entertaining, more entertaining football. But on the other side of this with Josh Dobbs, I'll say this. As a Bears fan, I love what's happening in Minnesota. I love it so much. It makes me so happy, because this is the type of thing that gets Josh Dobbs the starting job next year. And then they have like this Geno Smith where it's just like, oh crap, wait, did we really invest in Josh Dobbs? Why did we do this? Oh, we're putting ourselves behind a ball.
And they're winning, so they're not going to get a high pick.
Exactly. Like I'm loving this. I'm loving this. I also, in just football fashion, I love the story. I'm a fan of Josh Dobbs and what he's doing and everything. It's really fun to watch. And because I still don't think Minnesota certainly doesn't have a Super Bowl ceiling, but if they get Justin Jefferson back and Dobbs, this miracle run keeps going, there's nothing to say that Minnesota could not make a run as a wild card team. Absolutely.
Sure.
Especially in a conference like the NFC. So it's going to be fun to watch. And if you're Minnesota fans, again, roll with it, see what happens. And then hopefully for all of us rest of the NFC North fans, they commit to Josh Dobbs and it sets their franchise back a couple of years. That's fine with me. And they don't find a way to team up Drake May or Caleb Williams with those wide receivers and those weapons. That would be A-okay with this guy. I will say in finality, Kevin O'Connell. What do you say about him, the head coach of the Vikings? Everyone's talking about Dan Campbell, coach of the year. I totally get that, and I'd be very supportive of that. But how is he not right there? It's second. 1-4, team left for dead. Justin Jefferson goes down. You kind of inspire your guys. Everything was going wrong for the season. Remember, weeks 2, 3, 4, we were talking about another one-score loss. It's opposite. Yeah. He has found a way to turn this around with a great coaching job. And listen, it's not like they're going out there beating, the Eagles and the Chiefs every week. But they're winning some games that it's surprising, frankly, with what they have and the situation they're dealing with. So credit to them. And I continue to pray that they fall in love with Josh Dobbs and they sign him to like a 2-3 year deal at the end of the year. And then Justin Jefferson's demanding a trade by week 8 next year. That is truly what I just want full disclosure with our listening audience. That is what my brain is working on right now.
Well, with some of these candidates for Coach of the Year, I agree, Kevin O'Connell in that conversation. Another person in that conversation, I think at this point, has to be Mike Tomlin, who has gotten the Steelers now to 6-3, despite not much from his quarterback at all. The Steelers pull out a 23-19 gritty victory over Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. But obviously it wasn't done because of Kenny Pickett and crew, but more so because of the run game that is starting to starting to feel like it's getting some wheels underneath it. Jaylen Warren getting a lot more involvement. He and Najee Harris now have formed a very good 1-2 punch, and the offensive line is seeming to get its legs under them. But still the problems persist. And as much, as I've said all throughout the season that Matt Canada is, someone I don't think needs to have a long-term fixture with Pittsburgh. We've seen enough now of sample size with Kenny Pickett to where I am growing gravely concerned as to whether or not he's the quarterback of the future for Pittsburgh. And, we're, I believe, 21, 22 games into his tenure, still willing to give it to the end of the year to get that full season and a half plus a couple games sample size. But from what we've seen, it's just, it is, I will say, discouraging. Despite the win, they're 6-3. I understand Kenny Pickett has great moxie late in games and the fourth quarter comebacks and the, poise late has been awesome. And I'm, very encouraged by that. But the growth that we saw from the first several games to the second half of the season last year was exponential with Kenny Pickett, and it hasn't carried over to this season. We've seen sort of either a regression or a petering off of his play. And so, yeah, despite them winning 23-19, I think that's awesome. I think Tomlin deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do with little. There's still a lot of concerning elements. This has a feel for me, Mark, of what the 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers were able to do, where they went 11-0.
Yes,
right, and they were the only undefeated team. And
agree.
It was like, wow, this is like very impressive, but it never felt right the whole time. It always felt like concerning each game, and I'm like, oh, that's great, we're winning, but man, this doesn't feel like a team that can win a playoff game. That's kind of how this Pittsburgh Steelers teams feel for me.
Kenny Pickett has 6 touchdowns through 9 games, and Kenny Pickett has less touchdowns than Deshaun Watson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Bryce Young, Gardner Minshew. Mac Jones has more touchdown passes. The guys he's ahead of, the only Zach Wilson.
That's terrible.
Tommy DeVito has 3. Okay, Tommy DeVito has 3.
Tommy DeVito has half of the Kenny Pickett touchdowns.
Anthony Richardson, who played, I think, 1.5 games this year, has 4 or has 3. Yeah, I mean, it's concerning.
And again, what if we extrapolated even to since Kenny Pickett took over last year? He probably has the fewest touchdowns of any quarterback in that span.
I will say this. What's concerning is they have a solid offensive line. They have really nice backfield now. They're developing that 1-2 punch. And they have a really nice tight end and 2 really good wide receivers. So
Freiermuth hasn't played since like week 1 or whatever. He's been hurt all year. Yeah. That we take him out.
We'll edit that out in post. We're going to edit that out in post. Yeah. So they had a really nice tight end at one point in time. What happened to Freiermuth?
But I mean, regardless, they have Pickens and Deontay Johnson.
Now I need to know what happened to Freiermuth. Did he tear something?
No, he had a hamstring injury, and it kept lingering, and so they waited to put him on IR. So it was like about 2 to 3 weeks of trying to figure out if he can make a comeback. Then they just ended up putting him on IR when it looked like he was going to return. And so now I think he's
about to enter the window or something.
I think week 12 will be the first for him to come back. But yeah, I mean, they have missed him for the vast majority of the season. But regardless, they've had Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and those 2 backs you mentioned. So he's got weapons.
Yeah, he's got. That's the bite that I should have ended there. I should have pulled a Colin Cowherd and not started to name names and just say he's got weapons, and let you fill in the blanks. But I think it's obviously. I 100% agree with you. It feels like that 11-0 Steelers team where you're like, this is not going to end well. Eventually, it's going to end with a 44-13 blowout in a wild card game. You know what I mean? against a team that actually can score points. So we'll see. But for right now, again, ride it. And if I were a Steelers fan, I would continue to put my focus on the fact that our defense is making clutch plays when it matters, and that your quarterback's not turning it over. For only 6 interceptions, Mac Jones has 10. I mean, for only 6 touchdowns, Mac Jones has 10 touchdowns with 10 interceptions. Like, that's not Kenny Pickett either.
Yeah.
And so you again, Kenny Pickett's ceiling is probably the Kirk Cousins-esque guys. We knew that when he got drafted. You know what I mean? Like, his ceiling is the Dak Prescott type of, Jared Goff type of guys, which is like, you can win a bunch of games. You can maybe even
he's
got to
get there still. Yeah.
But he's got to get there, and you got to develop a lot around him. And again, it still feels like the offense hasn't developed it. On the flip side, for the Packers, what a bad loss for Green Bay. They lost 3 in a row. They eke out a win, and then boom, right back into the losing. And again, what does Green Bay do well?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're not. I mean, and the run game has been very all year. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs have both had these flashes, but nothing consistent. And a lot of it is Jordan Love. There was a ball that should have been intercepted. That was a really bad ball behind a receiver across the middle at one point in time. There was an ugly, ugly throw. Obviously, the late interception, he had a chance to win that game. And a really ugly throw over the middle into traffic that you just can't make when you've been studying tape and in the NFL circles for that long. And it was funny, earlier on the broadcast, one of the announcers was saying, like, Jordan Love made a throw through a hole in the guard center. Is only like a 10-yard just dump off to the running back, but it was kind of this weird laser sidearm, and it was really Aaron Rodgers-esque, off platform, just kind of like boom.
Yeah.
And in a way, maybe Aaron Rodgers is the worst person for you to learn behind. Aaron Rodgers was perfect to learn behind Brett Favre, because Aaron Rodgers is just as talented as Brett Favre, if not more talented.
Yeah, but if you can improvise.
But if you're not as talented as Aaron Rodgers and you learn behind him, and you're just like, you're watching that film for 4 years, like digesting it, and you're in practice with a guy who's just off platform, and you're just, let's be honest, Jordan Love for 3 years has known he's not starting. Like, it's not to say that he hasn't been maybe working his butt off, but you maybe get creative. You think, in practice I can do this, in practice I can do that. I don't know if they just too long on the bench, too late on the bench, but the Packers, they're in a world of hurt. I mean, what do they have going for them positive right now as far as what they do well identity-wise? I don't know it. And they have a quarterback who looks very much below average. He looks very much like he belongs more with the Mac Joneses and less with the CJ Strouds.
The only benefit for the Packers in this situation that they do have going for them is that they don't have a ton of money tied up in Jordan Love. It's not like they committed to the guy long term.
But you got to make the decision.
Like the Giants did with Daniel Jones, right? So, that's the thing. The Packers can't do what the Giants did with Daniel Jones. You just can't do it. So,
and I mean, he's 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions through 10 games. I mean, he's averaging a pick a game. Yeah. That's way too much.
And those touchdowns, those first 2 games where he threw 3 touchdowns each.
He had
if you take out a couple,
he had 6 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So you take that away, and he's playing some really bad ball in the last 6 weeks.
There are a lot of quarterbacks coming out in this draft that are getting a lot of praise. We'll start talking about them more. To be honest, my gut says there's only 3 names that I'm actually really trusting in. People keep listing off 4 or 5 other guys beyond the big 3. I'm just letting everyone know right now, when we get to that point, I'm having a lot of trouble digesting the J.J. McCarthy's of the world as a first-round pick. It seems very like a disaster waiting to happen if you're asking me. I'm confident with Caleb. I'm confident with Drake. I think Michael Penix can make every throw. I like those 3 guys. There's not a lot I love beyond those 3. Just want to put that out there.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, it'll be an interesting offseason for us to discuss, because the quarterback class is the best we've had in a few years for sure. Yeah. So really looking forward to seeing how those things shape up. The Buccaneers at home against the Titans get a win. So now Tennessee is 3-6. Brutal. Now it's just, definitely got to see what you got in Will Levis, I think, moving forward.
Yeah.
Buccaneers, though, 4-5. They are now staying afloat. They're a game out from, taking the lead in the NFC South. So, look, I mean, the Saints losing again. This is good stuff for Tampa Bay. Hopefully for them, Baker Mayfield, his thumb isn't a long-term problem, but he did injure his thumb, and so that's a questionable return for him this upcoming week. But they win 20-6, and so the Bucs kind of just staying afloat right now, and they still very much have an opportunity to take this division, especially if their car is hurt and if the Saints, start to fumble their way through the next few weeks. The opportunity is there for Tampa to strike.
Yeah, the Bucs. I'm done trying to predict what the Bucs should do and what they will do.
Yeah,
I'm done. Like on my Saturday show, I was like, "This is the point in time where the Bucs fall apart." And Will Levis on the road, I think he's going to score. And and I picked the Titans to win. And it's like I'm done. Like I'm just done trying to predict the middle of the road teams and figuring out what they're going to do. I'm just going to stick to reacting to what I watched. And what I watched is a Bucs team that. You forget how many veterans they have on this team. And there's a lot of veteran talent that's won and played in a lot of big games. And these are all dudes that are playing for their future, that are playing for, whether it's with Tampa or somewhere else. And they're definitely, in a weird way, they feel like motivated to win the division. They feel very motivated to win that division. And I don't blame them at this point in time with the way the division is shaking out.
It's so winnable, yeah.
Yeah, for the Titans, they're doing exactly what they need to do. Invest in Levis, let the kid play, let him make mistakes. I thought there was, again, a lot of good, a lot of shaky, but that's what you expect from a rookie. He's having the more traditional rookie season. CJ Stroud's on this insane trajectory. Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson are on like the opposite end of the trajectory of what you want your rookies to do. Levis is having that, kind of traditional rookie season. He didn't start the year, got his opportunity, made the most of it. Now he's going through the learning pains, the growing pains. Listen, losing games as a Titans fan right now is a good thing. It seems like you have your quarterback. There's a lot of talent at the top of the draft. If you can find your way to getting a top 8 pick, and knowing that there's going to probably be 3 quarterbacks in the top 5, that means there's a lot of offensive linemen, wide receiver weapons, and people that you could find some real talent to add to that roster for your young quarterback. So not the worst thing in the world if you're a Titans fan to just start, continuing to urge on good play from Levis, but L's in the column.
Yeah, and another L in the column for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were dealt a massive blow by the San Francisco 49ers, who are now resurgent once again. We'll get to that in a moment after a word from our sponsor, Durham Remodeling.
Serving the Quad Cities area since 1973, and with over 50 years of excellence on their track record, you'll see why it's so easy to trust their experts when it comes to all of your home improvement projects. This family-owned business has you covered on all your needs. Protect your home or building from the elements today and get great roof repair services. Need new windows? No problem. Durham Remodeling can upgrade your windows and doors. Whether you want to upgrade the little details in your home or office, or want to tear a room down and start fresh, the expert contractors at Durham Remodeling have your back. Even the smallest changes can completely transform your space. Ready to start entertaining your friends for backyard barbecues? Durham Remodeling will help you plan, design, and build your deck and patio for the perfect outdoor space. Durham Remodeling's work is 100% guaranteed, so you can rest assured that you're getting the best service around. Call 309-786-6715 today for your free estimate for all your roofing, siding, flooring, windows, and painting needs. That's Durham Remodeling, 309-786-6715.
Well, we mentioned a little bit last week how Trevor Lawrence wasn't, lighting up the scoreboard like we envisioned he would be going into year 3 in his NFL career. And in fact, he was the big reason that they lost this game this past week against the San Francisco 49ers. 3 turnovers for Trevor. And it is starting to feel like like Jacksonville may be one of those smoke and mirrors type of teams where it seemed that everything was on the upswing and all of the perfect makings were in place for a dynasty to start to
Workable
form.
schedule too.
And look, man, I mean, we have been super high on Trevor Lawrence since before he even entered the NFL. We've talked about how great instinctually he is, how he has all of the physical tools, and he does. He took a huge step forward last year with Doug Peterson, had an epic comeback playoff victory, and it just seems like things have regressed a little bit. So I think it's fair for us to kind of start to call out the potential for Trevor Lawrence to, and I still believe fully in him. I'm sure you do too. But this has been a really rough go, really all season long. And he hasn't been able to overcome things to kind of make it the reason they win a game is, oh, I'm carrying the team to a victory. It just hasn't been the case. They've had a great run game. They've had a very opportunistic defense this year. And so that is troublesome. And when you come against a team that's got the best defense in the league, we see what happens. No touchdowns, just 3 points for this Jacksonville offense, and just a brutal game all around for everyone involved, as San Francisco on the flip side, Mark, completely looked refreshed and resurgent, as I had mentioned, putting up 34 points. Brock Purdy and company looking great. Even though Christian McCaffrey's touchdown streak ended at 17 games, he's the only 49er, it appeared, to not be able to score in this game. But yeah, I think San Francisco has once again kind of catapulted themselves into we're the class of the NFC type of conversation, whereas Jacksonville is now starting to feel like, ooh, maybe they aren't as big of championship contenders as we once thought.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed in Jacksonville. We all wanted this to be right. Like I picked Jacksonville +3. I was like, God, they're getting 3 points at home off a bye, getting healthy. They don't.
And I don't think we would have been shocked if they lost the game, but it's how they lost, right?
I even said on my show on Saturday, I was like, losing to the Niners is nothing to be ashamed of. But, and I felt like they even had a good opportunity to win the mental game, because it felt like the pressure was all on the Niners to win a game. They lost 3 in a row. Everyone's questioning their quarterback. They had to go out and get Chase Young and be aggressive to kind of quell, the columnists and everything. And man, that was embarrassing. It was bad. They were sloppy. Their offensive line isn't great. And I don't want to make excuses for Trevor, but that's tough. I mean, it's tough to play behind a bad offensive line, but 9 touchdowns in 9 games for the number 1 overall pick, the guy who's supposed to be the second coming. A lot of these guys who are the recent, next Andrew Lucks have had rough goes. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has not looked great. Heisman winner, Kyler Murray's had a very rough start to his career, number 1 pick. Heisman winner Bryce Young has obviously had a very bad start to his career, number 1 pick. It makes you wonder a little bit about Caleb Williams, undersized, move around, improvised guy, number 1, potential number 1 pick, Heisman winner. And just it's been bad. It's been bad.
It's hard in the NFL. It just shows you how hard the league is, right? Yeah.
And he has an opportunity to. The season's not over. They're still in first place in their division. But he's got to ball out. He's got to start balling out. He's got to start, producing in a way to where it's like, oh, he is putting his team on his back. Because, listen, Patrick Mahomes, even in his worst game in the Super Bowl, where he had no offensive line, and he was going up against a Tampa defensive line that was one of the best in the last 20 years in the NFL, and he was getting eaten alive in the Super Bowl, the dude still battled his butt off, and you still felt like he was going to put his team in a great position. And that was young Patrick Mahomes. That was year 3, Patrick Mahomes. So for Trevor Lawrence, I need to start seeing that effort. I need to start feeling that. And he's not an emotional guy, which I think is a good and a bad thing. It's a little bit like Herbert, where you just they're level-headed. I think that's good, because I think it means they don't make big mistakes, and they don't make huge mistakes. But I need to see more killer instinct, and I'm not seeing it right now. And you get punched in the mouth like that, and I don't see the grit, the fight, the determination to at least get a touchdown on the board and keep scrapping and clawing. There was none of that. I was very, very disappointed in Jacksonville. Like I said, for the Niners, this was such a huge win for them. Such a get-right game. On the road, I really felt all the pressure was on the Niners. Purdy played well. Everyone seems to be healthy. Everyone got involved. Debo, Kittle, Ayuk all got involved. Williams was back. McCaffrey's dealing with a little bit of a lingering oblique issue. He didn't look quite himself 100%. But this Niners team,
they added Chase Young,
Yeah, this Niners team is officially back on Super Bowl watch 100%.
It's kind of bizarre, man. I feel like we could end up with the exact same championship game matchups this upcoming year, with maybe you swap out the Bengals for the Ravens or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's just shaping up, especially in the NFC. 49ers and Eagles are so far ahead of the pack in the NFC that it's kind of a joke.
I wouldn't put them so far ahead of the Lions. We'll get to my Lions. Okay. I would say I wouldn't say so far ahead. I think the problem is I'm having right now, the Lions defense is not performing like they were early in the year. The Lions defense has to start keeping up their end of the bargain a little bit more. I agree with you. I think there's some separation right now, but I wouldn't say so far ahead. It would not shock me if the Lions, especially because I think they could end up with a better record than the Niners. If that game's at Ford Field or something like that, it wouldn't shock me if the Lions beat the Niners.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think I'd probably relinquish that statement a little bit and put the Lions in that conversation for sure. Yeah, they deserve that. They've been really good. The Browns deal the Ravens with a big blow in a 33-31 win. Another one of those walk-off game winners. Deshaun Watson again starting to put some things together here. Obviously wasn't all roses for him in this game, but he's playing one of the best defenses in the league, and so pairing that with a divisional matchup is always going to present some issues. But I thought Deshaun Watson overall played pretty well, especially late in this game, to help get the Browns back in position to win this. And Lamar Jackson didn't have a good game either. We saw two of the best defenses on the field in this one, and it really showed. Jackson was baited into 2 picks in this game. And so overall, very good kind of toe-to-toe AFC North battle, physical game. And really what this spelled for me was the Ravens had an opportunity to get to 8 wins, 8-2. I feel, even as competitive as the North has been, I feel like 8-2 would give them just enough wiggle room to where I would feel confident and comfortable saying, okay, we can afford a bad loss moving forward and still, feel comfortable with the division. That is no longer the case for Baltimore, especially with the Bengals coming up. Both teams now coming off of a bad loss. This is a huge game, as you said. I mean, if the Bengals win this game, the Ravens no longer have remotely a stranglehold on this division that they have had the first half of the season. And for the Browns, you lose that game, go to 5-4. It's starting to feel a little bit hopeless because of the losses in division. You lost to Pittsburgh, you lost to Baltimore. Those are tough to come back from because now you have to win like 3 games in the division moving forward, and that's tough. But you start to stack division wins or get one against the leaders. This now puts you in a prime spot. And so the Browns right now in 3rd place, but like really in a tie for first with everyone, it feels like. So huge win for the Browns and kind of a tough loss for the Ravens, but they have an opportunity here in 3 days to rectify that. I
said last week, one of the reasons why I love the Ravens so much is because they're winning games without Lamar having to be Superman. It's time for Superman. That was a game where Superman had to show up, and he didn't. Yeah. And let's be honest, now I'm concerned because now it's like, all right, have I seen Lamar be Superman at all this year? No. And then when they really needed him to put the cape on, he had the costly interceptions. And now you look at his stats, you say 10 touchdowns through 10 games, and you had a 14-point lead at home against a division rival, and you let them back in the game. Now I get it. Defense gives up points, but you're turning the ball over. You're not able to close out that game.
Your cause.
Yeah, you're not able to close out that game. That's a concern. It's a real concern. The AFC North is the one division where I literally can say to myself, if the team is playing another team in that division, it's a coin flip. Like, honestly, like the underdog will probably win. Like, honestly, whoever's the non-favorite in Vegas's eyes, bet them to win, because it just seems like they read the press clippings extra hard that week, and they scrap and claw and fight, and they upset the team. So I'm waiting to see who's the underdog in Bengals versus Ravens before I bet that game, and I'll bet the underdog. As far as the Browns go, I mean, that was their season on the line, down big early. And everyone's talking about they were down 14, but it was bigger than that earlier in the game, right? Wasn't it like 14-0, 21-3 or something like that? I mean, it was.
I think it was 21-3. Let me check.
It was a gut check moment, and as bad as Watson played to start the game, credit to him and Stefanski. They did not give up. They clawed their way back into that game. They put the pressure on Baltimore's offense, and Baltimore's offense could not convert and make the big plays when they needed to late to continue drives, to not turn the ball over, to get extra field goals or points to secure a victory. And so, I mean, a season-altering win for Cleveland if they can make a run here now and string together some wins and find their way into the playoffs. We'll look at the second half turnaround for them in this game as the moment when it all started.
Yeah, so the Baltimore was up 17-9 at the half, and then they were up 24-9 to start the third quarter.
I knew it was sizable.
Yeah, and then the Browns come back, make it 24-17, and then Baltimore makes it 31-17. It's like, okay, they're creating the separation, but then the fourth quarter happened, and it was, three straight scoring drives for Baltimore that ended up resulting in this. But yeah, the pick six was massive. That obviously changed the tides entirely. And made it 31-30, and the rest is history after that with the game winner and such. But yeah, massive game. And, I think the one encouraging sign for the Ravens is that the emergence of Keaton Mitchell might actually show, like, okay, we've got a legit running back that we can lean on that can break games wide open, right? Because they've had amazing run games pretty much since I've been a fan of the league, right? But yeah. It's been a while since they've had like the go-to running back. They've had to do committee approaches with injuries. If Keaton Mitchell can be the Devon Achane that the Dolphins saw earlier this year moving forward, then Baltimore has another dimension to their team, right? And then as for the Browns, if this chemistry continues, if Deshaun Watson is really starting to put something together, then that's obviously a concern for the North and the rest of the conference too. Because
before we move on,
such a good defense.
Last thing I just want to ask you today: if I were to say who wins the AFC North, who are you going with?
That is very tough. I feel like the Bengals. I feel the most confidence in, only because I think Burrow's the best quarterback, and I think that he finds a way to get his team to that division crown, despite them currently being in fourth place.
I know,
but that's just kind of how I feel. I don't trust the Ravens overall because I feel that they're going to lose these division games moving forward. The Ravens are a team I could see being 2-4 in the division at the end of the year. And to me, that's not going to win you the division. If you're 2-4 in the AFC North, I don't see you winning that division. And so, but the Ravens just don't play their division opponents terribly well as of late. And so that concerns me. And I'm just not sure where they go from here. Meanwhile, the Browns are just, they scratch and claw. The Steelers are, feisty. I don't know, dude. It really is a total toss up. I have this could go any which way. But as it is right now, I'm very, comfortable believing that every team in this division is going to make the playoffs. Like I think every wild card team just comes from the AFC North, unless the Chargers start to do some magical things. I mean, that's
magical, like firing their coach. That would be magical.
Yeah, for sure. The Cardinals had the return of Kyler Murray, and he obviously played overall pretty well. He moved well, that's for sure. That was the most exciting thing to see from a Cardinals fan perspective, was that he was moving around like the old Kyler Murray back there, but no touchdown passes from him. He did have the one interception, but he ran a touchdown in as well, and overall helped engineer them back to a comeback victory in which they won as time expired, 25-23 over the Falcons. So for the Cardinals' sake, that did kind of have implications to where they fall in the draft order this upcoming year. They're now 2-8. So right now, is it the Chicago Bears, right, that have the number 1 overall pick as it stands right now because of the Carolina Panthers situation? Meanwhile, the Falcons fall to 4-6 on the year, and they have more and more questions as to what their quarterback situation is. They are clearly going to have to be players for a quarterback this upcoming draft class.
The Falcons, to me, when we talked about it last week, and I mentioned my great Max Crosby Raiders trade for the, on the Friday show, like trade for the Bears. Falcons are absolutely, I think, are going to be a player in. We'll offer you a prime time player, you know what I mean, and multiple draft picks to get a quarterback, and that would be something I think would be a dream scenario for the Bears. I know our guy Tyler Dawson. He said this on Twitter. His whole idea today was just draft Marvin Harrison number 1, or like draft a quarterback number 1 and then trade back up for Marvin Harrison, something like that. I still am on the firm belief of if the Bears end up with a 1 or 2 pick, you trade it for as big of a haul as you can get that includes a current A player like they did with DJ Moore. The best thing the Bears have done in my last 5 years is getting DJ Moore in that trade and extend this first round pick into more future first round picks next year. Anyways, regardless, I will say the Falcons, they're lost right now. They're very lost, and they have talent. I still believe in Arthur Smith. I know there's a lot of Arthur Smith could get fired. I think Arthur Smith isn't the problem. I think there's some issues overall, obviously, with the quarterback play. The defense is missing 1 or 2 elite pieces, like an elite corner, and then someone who's just like a dominant 3 technique in the middle, a little bit more of a run stuffing defense. And then, obviously the quarterback is the engine that makes everything go. And Heineke and Ritter, they're just not good. They're just, neither of them are good enough for long enough to be competitive. And they ran into it was a bad scenario. The Cardinals were going to win that game if they were playing anyone who wasn't one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league. I really feel that way. There are sometimes just momentum things. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Kyler coming back. He's desperate. The Cardinals
James Conner returned.
Yeah. The Cardinals have been scrappy all year, with their win over the Cowboys. So I think that was a little bit of a buzzsaw move. And for the Cardinals, if you're a Cardinals fan and you're looking at it, obviously you probably have a frustrating relationship with Kyler Murray, but he did lead you to the playoffs. He does feel humbled to me. You know what I mean? Like Kyler's trajectory was number 1 pick, him and Cliff Kingsbury, an okay rookie season, and then a spectacular get him to the playoffs sophomore year, by the 3rd year makes the playoffs. Last year, then tears the ACL, gets the big contract, the Call of Duty stuff. He feels very humbled to me. You know what I mean? Like, and the way he played yesterday looked like vintage Kyler Murray for the most part. So, if you're the Cardinals fans, I think, again, kind of like the Bears franchise right now, is play it out. Like, whether you're rooting for wins or losses, I'm lucky in the sense that we have the Panthers pick. So I can root for my team to win and also know that I have this other asset. But if I'm the Cardinals right now, I don't know if I'd be rooting for losses. I just don't know if that's the best thing for you right now. Feels like a franchise that right now just needs some positivity, and having Kyler Murray as your quarterback when you already have him to a secure long-term deal and adding talent around him might be the way to go. Obviously, he's got 7 games to kind of still prove that, like Justin Fields has now. So these guys, the situations feel just so eerily similar for both teams and both quarterbacks.
Yeah, they really do. I agree with that, actually, because I think Kyler Murray is the quarterback for this team moving forward. Obviously, they've paid him as such, but anyone can get out from under it if they need to, and they could have drafted a quarterback if they really wanted to and move on entirely. But if they believe in Kyler as, we're still going to rally around him, then try and win some games. You're probably not going to make it outside of the top 10 at this point anyway. So you'll be able to get a really good player, whether it's another, tackle or something to protect him more, or another weapon in the receiving game. you can do that. But yeah, the Cardinals, the trajectory is moving up for that team and franchise as a
and they
whole.
have the Houston pick too. Remember, because Houston
Oh,
traded
that's
for
right.
Jonathan
Yes.
Allen.
Yeah.
So, and now that pick is like in the teens because Houston's playing well.
But you
So
could package.
they have 2 first-round picks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could get 2 really good players to add to a roster and build if Kyler plays well and is your guy. Or maybe the play is you trade Kyler Murray. I think Kyler, if he plays well, will have more trade value than like a Justin Fields. You might be able to get a 2nd-round pick for a Kyler Murray, whereas Justin Fields might only net you a 3rd, you know what I mean? Or a player in a 3rd or something like that. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility for the Bears and the Cardinals. And we're going to have a lot of talks about them in the coming weeks. But I think both, from my standpoint, I just want to watch both quarterbacks play it on out. I hope they both stay healthy, and I hope they have a chance to prove it. And if they don't, then they don't, and you move on. The NFL moves on quickly.
The Lions go on the road and get a walk-off victory on a 41-yard field goal against the Chargers, 41-38. It wasn't pretty for the Lions, but Jared Goff engineered quite the game here for this team, and they had the return of David Montgomery. A lot of bright spots for Detroit in this game. Their defense obviously gave up 38 points. You never want to see that, but at the end of the day, they had the game-winning drive that resulted in the field goal to catapult them to 7-2 on the season. And on the flip side for LA, they fall to 4-5 and now are very much on the outside looking in once again. There may not be a hotter seat in the league right now than Brandon Staley, given how much talent this team has and how underperforming they've been, especially when the defense consistently year in and year out has been poor, despite Brandon Staley, that being his side of the ball.
We've said it. They should fire him. I mean, like at this point, it's bad. Like it's really bad. This team has way too much talent to be making and it's not like the Bears are bad and you watch them and it's like, oh, they're just so poorly coached. It's like there's no coaching. Like guys are wide open on the back end of that defense. And there doesn't seem to be any inspiration or fight or rah-rahness. Like he's 0% Dan Campbell. And when you're
not much cohesion.
Yeah, and when your quarterback is a non-verbal, non-emotional guy, like Jared Goff is, and you need an emotional leader of men, and Brandon Staley's just not it. And it's a bad loss for the Chargers. Really bad loss for them and their chances to make the playoffs. Great win on the flip side for my Lions. This Lions team is a team that is finding ways to win. I love it because it reminded me a lot of the Seahawks game. For the majority of the game, it's like the Lions are the better team, but gosh, their defense is just having a bad day. And at the end of that Seahawks game, what happened? They lost it. This was the opposite. Yeah. At the end of this game, they found a way to make sure they had the ball. They could kick the field goal. Dan Campbell going for the 4th down. Cojones alert. He's a walking Stan Marsh meme. And I really love watching this Lions team play. I hope this Lions team can get to, maybe not home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. It'd be great if it could. I just can't wait to watch Lions hosting a team at Ford Field in the playoffs for the first time in so many years. It's going to be just electric. And I want it to happen so bad.
No, that will be awesome. And as you mentioned, they play inspired football for sure.
Keenan Allen also is a stud.
He's very good.
We got to mention Keenan Allen. He did. I mean, nothing wrong with that offense for the Chargers. Kellen Moore's doing his job.
Yeah, and Quentin Johnston, the rookie, had a big game himself, so he's starting to come along too. Just imagine you put Mike Williams in there, and they are absolutely a force. It's just unfortunate they can't get the defensive side to match that at all. The Giants go on the road and get absolutely just destroyed by the Cowboys. No surprise to either of us here. The Cowboys are now 6-3 on the season with the 49-17 victory over the G-Men. But this was kind of tailor-made for that type of game with Tommy DeVito starting at quarterback for the New York Giants. And, Dak Prescott had a nice 5-touchdown game against an inferior opponent. But at the end of the day, I think we'll keep seeing it until they make, a championship game. It's just not a team that we're too confident in, I don't think.
The New York Giants are in desperate need of a top 2 pick. Like they are now in desperation mode. They might need it more than anyone else because they absolutely need to get a franchise quarterback. Like they need it. They need it. They need Dable needs it. And they could turn around, I think, fairly quickly if they figure that out. But they are in desperate need of that. And they're also, I think, it wouldn't shock me if you're talking about a team trading up. Like, talk about a team that really needs like an elite weapon and an elite quarterback. Like, they're the team that desperately needs more than anyone, Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, they need that double dip.
They are disgustingly bad at moving the football. And part of me is starting to question Daboll, but the other part of me just goes,
what's he got to work with?
Yeah. And they failed so bad at the front office in that Daniel Jones contract, and we're seeing it in play out in front of our eyes. I mean, they were getting embarrassed for the Cowboys again. Yeah, don't believe in them, but hey, they did exactly what they needed to do. They blew out an inferior opponent. Great, check mark, check in the box, move on. Good for them.
Yep, 100%. The Commanders fall in devastating fashion for Washington to the Seahawks, 29.
They're battling still.
They are. They're that feisty team for sure. Sam Howell had another big game. So it's kind of hard to make of Washington's situation because it's very Ron Rivera, right? They're just good enough to like be competitive and get by, but they still need something to actually push them on the tracks to where they can actually start to build some momentum as a franchise year over year. And it just doesn't seem like that's happening. They're one of those teams that will give you their best, and it's going to be a difficult win each week, but ultimately they don't move the needle. And the Seahawks, this was kind of a must win for them too,
Huge.
Right? I mean, to win, to go to 6-3 now, to really stay afloat in the NFC West was big. Obviously they're playing in a lesser than conference. So, the window for them to make the playoffs was still going to be open.
Yeah.
Even if they lost, but this was a big win for them to get some more confidence again, because this team really had not been playing terribly well throughout this season. Ken Walker, had a couple big moments in this game, so they can get the running game maybe back on track a little bit. Geno had some, timely throws in this game. He had 369 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it really felt like a get right game for Seattle. And, yes, they won in, down to the wire last second fashion, but you'll take a win any way you can get it. And the fact that they're 6-3, it's kind of like the Steelers. It's like, yeah, it doesn't feel great the way you've gotten here, but you're here and you're in the playoffs and you're still competing for the division crown. And so in that regard, you got to feel like, Pete Carroll and company are pleased, at least in the situation they're in.
Hey, they took care of business. The Commanders are doing exactly what we said after the trade, right? They've kind of waved the white flag, but also while wanting to see their young quarterback play well. And that's exactly what this game was all about. Drake May played, not Drake May, saying the other UNC quarterback, you know what I mean? Drake May, Sam Howell, he played really well. Like he didn't lose them this game. And you absolutely, I now feel like you build around Sam Howell. If you're Washington, you just need now to retool around him and probably make a change to the head coach. And then if you are the Seattle Seahawks, you did exactly what you need to do. You beat a game, an inferior opponent came to your building. It was tough, but you found a way to win the game late. You played well offensively. Tyler Lockett, nice game from him. I feel like the first time we've talked about Tyler Lockett all season long. And then you have everything in front of you. They play San Francisco 2 of their next 3 games. So you have it in front of you. Can you find a way to at least split with San Francisco and stay alive in this division? It'll keep you alive in the wild card. They're going to be a wild card team at this point in time. They're too talented not to be, especially in the weaker NFC. So now it's about, can you stay alive in that division? 2 of your next 3 are against the Niners.
Aaron Rodgers has signaled a return by mid-December, somehow still floating these things out. But it might not matter because the New York Jets fall to the Raiders 16-12 in just a terrible Sunday night football game. Not fun at all. Jets are now 4-5. It's just I don't know where they go with the quarterback position. At this point, it seems like you just have to stick with Zach Wilson. But like,
well,
it
that's
can't
what
hurt
Robert
to go to
Saleh
Trevor
said.
Siemian.
Did you
I
hear
know
that
he keeps
quote?
saying it.
That
no,
quote,
I didn't hear this
it
one.
was he was on a New York radio show, and this was last week after the loss. He had said basically they asked him, one of the guys, the radio guys, like, why not see what the other guys on, Trevor Siemian, he's a pro, he's a veteran, like why not see what they look like with this starting group? And literally Robert Saleh had to say, he started to do like a coach speak, like, well, it's just that, and you could just tell he didn't know what to say, and he just said, I don't know. I plead the fifth. Like basically saying,
Wow.
people have told him, you're starting Zach Wilson no matter what. So you're absolutely right when you say that. They are in a situation where basically the ownership and the general manager basically said, you got to play this kid. You're going to play him. We're playing him no matter what, and no matter how bad he is. And I feel like at times in the last 2 weeks, if they had maybe had anyone else, if they had Josh Dobbs, if they had Trevor Siemian, even maybe they win one of those 2 games and stay alive. Absolutely right.
Yeah, well, at least 2-0 for Antonio Pierce in Vegas.
Good for him.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's
he's earning the job.
The interim coach getting 2 in a row. It's a rare thing to happen in the NFL.
I like his policy of letting the practice squad guys on the sideline. I think that's cool.
Oh,
for home games.
Yep.
Because he's very much like they're part of the team. They do all the work, and most teams don't do that. I think that's a really what a great way for an interim guy. And he's got a Dan Campbell, Mike Vrabel, former player, passionate CEO type of vibe to him.
Yeah, the players like him.
And I think at this point in time, he might be all that the Raiders can afford.
Yes, for sure. Well, we've got a big Thursday night game, obviously, as we mentioned, the Ravens and Bengals coming up here in a couple days, so that should be very exciting. And then, of course, another full slate of games as they become more and more meaningful as we get well into the second half of the 2023 NFL season. So stay tuned for more episodes. We appreciate the follow, any likes on social media, and, of course, YouTube, and subscribing there as well. Appreciate all the support from everybody and our sponsors. But for Mark, I'm Dan, and this has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan on our Week 10 recap episode. We'll see you back here for more action next week.